One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the portion of our meeting reserved for public comment. If anybody wants to approach the board publicly tonight, just please step up to the mic, introduce yourself. And are there any hands? Anybody speaking tonight? Okay, we'll move on to our next agenda item. That's the approval of the minutes and the payment of the bills. Two of them under the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept? Motion to accept. Second. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Any questions about the payment of the bills? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. We'll go on to our action items. Mr. Nelson, your report.
Yeah, so a number of things that have happened recently in our schools. We had on October 6th, on Friday, October 6th, we had Manufacturing Day, and that occurred across the state. And at John Long Middle School, we had our 8th grade students. So all the 8th grade students took a tour of both Waukesha Metals and blanking systems here in Grafton. So they rotated half of them. I was able to go to the Waukesha Metals one, and we had teachers that were there in the groups, and students walked around. Waukesha Metals had different employees walking students around, talking to them about the various pieces and the different types of jobs that they have. And so as we look at manufacturing and students looking at that in a new light, that's a great opportunity for our 8th graders to consider those various careers that they have for students. So that was back on the 6th. You can see our students that were engaged on that day. And then this past Friday, we had a little more than a half day of school at the high school. And then I think it was our 6th career fair, or I guess there's a different way to do it this year. So I've asked Mr. Manthei to sort of walk us through some of the different things that they did as the whole high school took an opportunity to look at some different options in our community.
So partnering with the Grafton Area Chamber of Commerce and also U.S. Bank, we were able to take all of our students out into the local communities and have them have an opportunity to take a look at a different career. Last year we did the career fair here in our gym, where we brought a whole bunch of representatives into our gymnasium, and then we're kind of on an every other year basis, where this year with them we take them out. And you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see different areas that students could go or choose to go to. They signed up for this on their own with these different choices. You can see that everywhere from Gauthier Biomedical to Pace, GenMed, Control Dynamics, Road and Farms, Meyer, Digital Edge, and the list really goes on and on. We did take a number of students over to MATC to explore their different career pathways and opportunities there. Had a number of speakers here at the high school that were focused more on business and law, and also some specialized tours like Casio Interstate Music, which is a little bit outside of this area, but really specifically for our students with a fine arts background. So we want to thank all those businesses for participating in this. It's quite an undertaking to take 700 students out of the building and move them out into the community, so there's a lot of organization that goes along with that. And then we just included some pictures for you as you go through here. So the first one, you'll see our group of students at Gauthier Biomedical had a nice setup for us. And then you'll see the next picture is actually the fire and police department, who combined each to give individual presentations to our students. The next one's interesting. You'll see Hoffman, who agreed to take 40 of our students around to all 3 of the different work sites, and gave students an opportunity to look at plans and talk them through kind of the specifics of what's happening within our buildings. And then I included one from the village, who we had a group of students at Village Hall to talk about our village, but then also politics as well. Next, MATC, so we have a larger group that was there, and that was them at MATC. And then we included a picture of the agriculture at Road and Farm, and then last at Meyer. So we just wanted to show you a variety of the different things that were happening on that day. Great day overall for our kids. We appreciate our community sponsors and partners being the Grafton Area Chamber of Commerce and U.S. Bank. So we thought it was just a great day for our kids.
Yep, so great things for our kids. It was great seeing them pretty quickly, buses being called out and seeing students get out of here, getting onto the field trip in that way. But good opportunity for kids to be thinking outside of careers that they may be thinking of now, what else is out there. And Pam King and the Chamber did a great job, and then U.S. Bank sponsoring it, and the Educational Foundation as well, which is great. And then this week is Red Ribbon Week. So the theme this week is Be Bright, Live Right, and Stay Drug-Free. So at the high school and middle school, they had a speaker today. Elementary schools, they have different dress-down days throughout the week. So we encouraging those different themes with our students throughout the week in a special way, but obviously throughout the year we do that, but this is a great week to emphasize that. As you drive by district office, you'll see that the Leos have their Drive Sober and Don't Text and Drive display out there showing the effects of that and reminding people of that also. So there was some really good emphasis this week in those areas. And then upcoming at both the middle school and the high school is at the middle school, it's the musical The Wizard of Oz, so November 3rd through 5th. That's coming up very soon, so mark your calendars for that. And then for the first time, last year we were trying to engage our community and thinking of ways to engage some of our senior citizens. You know, we started allowing people to walk in our buildings and so forth, and so we talked last year about maybe that dress rehearsal night, why don't we open that up for senior citizens? So Mr. Arndt has sort of taken on that challenge and has reached out to senior citizens so that on the 2nd, that's going to, instead of just being a regular dress rehearsal, it'll be an opportunity for senior citizens to come in and have a free showing of our musical, a great opportunity for the kids to see, get an opportunity to have people in the seats before it really starts on the 3rd. So that's exciting there. And then the musical My Fair Lady is at the high school on November 16th through 19th. So some great opportunities to get involved and see some of our kids involved in various things very soon. And then new that I don't have on here that just happened this weekend is our boys and girls cross-country teams. They both qualified for state. The girls were sectional champs for the first time ever. So first time in school history our girls were sectional champs, and the first time a girls team has qualified for state in back-to-back years. And the boys are returning to state after a 14-year absence. So very exciting for our cross-country team to be able to have the boys and girls both qualify for the first time ever and girls to be sectional champs. So kudos to them over the weekend. At our next board meeting, Kevin Moore will give us an update on all of our fall sports and individual recognitions as well as team recognitions, but that just happened this weekend, so we want to wish them well as they head into the next weekend and at state, and exciting for them. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Move on to our committee reports, and we have 2 standing, 1 ad hoc. We'll start with the curriculum committee report.
The curriculum committee met on October 9th. Diana gave an update on the elementary specialization, which we will be anticipating a report at our next meeting on their recommendation from administration. John Long Middle School scheduling update was given. They are looking into various scheduling options for the upcoming school year. And then as tonight, we went over using, Jen Deering and Beth Lambie did a presentation on using assessments and differentiation and about how they're using various test results and scores to serve, especially in the elementary population. And then tonight, we'll hear a presentation on the board exam and the state ACT data, at which Diana did as well. And then we just adjourn to the next meeting.
Any questions for Carrie? And we'll move on to the ad hoc committee on goal planning. I'm not sure who the leader is of this committee.
So the committee met on October 2nd. We continue to look for and document draft objectives and indicators of success. We've gotten through, I think, goal number 3, and our next meeting is October 30th. I think one of the first things that we're going to do for the board is to lay out a timeline for, we've laid out the deliverables, but we haven't really laid out a good timeline as to when we will finish with our work for consideration by the full board. I think that would help the board. But our plan is just to continue working on objectives and indicators of success for each of those objectives.
Questions for Paul? Thank you. And then finally, the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee met on October 18th, and the agenda items are under E and F to be covered tonight. So the recommendation of the Finance Committee for the full board to consider.
Okay. Any questions? All right, then we'll move on to our personnel report.
Yes, so we have a retirement that we asked the board to approve for the next school year. So it's Diane Verpraskas, who's our occupational therapist in our district. Diane's been with us since '86. She'd taken some time off with her kids, and it's part of that time, but she started with us in '86 and is looking ahead to retirement next school year. So she's finishing out this year, and we wish her well. She's been a valued employee, and but we asked the board reluctantly to approve that retirement. And then just today, which is why this got added today, our district deaf and hard of hearing teacher, we're recommending that we hire Devon Breeze, who has been an interpreter in our district in the past, and we had contracted with CISA to supply this service, and then there was a licensing issue that they had, and so that created a gap for us to be able to fill by November 3rd when this person was leaving, and Devon had taken a leave to work with Germantown to get her practicum as a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, and so she's been in our district. She coaches at the high school, is a valued employee, and so it's an opportunity for us to bring her on board in this role. And then the domino effect for that will be that now we're having a meeting on Wednesday with someone for her interpreter role, because she was coming back as an interpreter on the 9th? 6th, thank you. Oh, because the 3rd is the last day. So the 6th. Coming back on the 6th, so now we're looking at that, but we would ask that the board approve Devon for that district deaf and hard of hearing teacher. And then just informational, Nicole for our library clerk at Woodview, who's a very sweet lady, and I probably should have remembered, I should have asked her when she walked by how to say her last name. How do I say her last name? Alakanavius. How can I not know how to say that? And then replacing her is Amy Stanwood, a library clerk at Woodview Elementary. But we would ask the board to approve both retirement and the new hire.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Questions for Jeff? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then it passes. With our regrets regarding Diane, as you said.
She's been great.
Okay. Waiting for my agenda to load here. Okay.
Elementary attendance boundaries.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes. So, so we reviewed our elementary school attendance areas for the 18-19 school year multiple times. At the last meeting, at September 25th meeting, the board unanimously voted to approve option D. Following the board approving that, we have received questions from both district parents as well as open enrolled parents about student placements for the 18-19 school year. So we have specific information for our open enrolled students, what grade they're in, what school they currently attend, as well as where there is room at the various levels, and the administration is making a recommendation on where placing those open enrolled students. So we reviewed a lot of this data, and I'll apologize on the front end. The sheet that was sent out last week, the final numbers at the bottom. Here, if you can go to that second page, and I'll come back to the first page. It's updated. So these numbers, these numbers here were inaccurate in the one that was sent out. So there is a new one in the thing there. And what happened is, the beauty of Google Docs is we created the document, and then we were working with it. And then today I noticed that the numbers they were wrong, and we had two documents that were named the same way, and it was right. We fixed it in one of them, and the one we printed wasn't. So I apologize for that. But what it was doing is it was summing 77, 28, and 78, and then dividing it by 6. And so that's why it said like 27.6 or something like that. It was the numbers were wrong. We wanted to sum in these other areas, but this one, we really just wanted to sum those two and divide by 6. So when there was open enrolled kids, then it threw off our numbers quite a bit. So just as if you printed it off in the audience, or if board members did before this afternoon, then it was wrong. And we caught that, but not before we'd already sent the wrong thing out. So, so after we'd reviewed, so we met with parents, had some emails from parents, both plus and minuses or concerns and encouragements in various ways. We looked at all the options, and the administration at this is not recommending that we look at grandfathering students. And some of the reasons that we say that is, one of our goals as a district was to eliminate shuttles between our K-5 buildings. And if we were to look at grandfathering students at various grade levels, even where there may be a grade where there is space at a grade level, we aren't going to be able to plan for what if there's siblings that are coming along later. What does that do if more students enroll in our district? if it's a younger level and more students do enroll in our district, and then we run out of space, then we're stuck in a similar spot where we are now, where if someone moves in at a grade level, they could live right across the street from the school and not have room for them, and we'd be shuttling them. And also we talked about when do we stop grandfathering? Is it the kids that are only in our school district currently? What if I have a 3-year-old that's going to be coming soon? Where do we draw the line with that? We saw that administratively as causing issues in the future. So we said, is it only for students above a certain grade level? What about siblings? What about siblings who haven't entered our system yet? We do state that, if the board were to consider grandfathering, 5th grade is an area that there is, there's 124 students in 5th grade, and so divided by 6 at each level, it comes to an average of 21 students per grade level. As I stated in here, though, if you did look at doing that, we would say that you should consider both GES, Kennedy, and Woodview families. And as weird as that may sound, because it's like, well, how can you grandfather GES kids when they're leaving their building? There may be families who would say, well, my kids have always gone to school with Joey, and Joey's going to Woodview, and now my kid has to go to Kennedy, and he wants to go to school with Joey. Now, the issue may be, what if Joey and myself have a falling out over the summer? Do we let them go back? Is that a binding agreement? We do talk about transportation, and because one of our goals is not to increase, one of the options that you looked at D was it decreased average busing times, kept the cost basically the same. Right, we're starting to sort of go full head of steam on that to see if they can cut some costs, but it wasn't going to cost us more. But we would say that if we were to look at grandfathering, that providing transportation would be onto the parent, similar to with open enrollment. We aren't recommending that, but if you were to look at that, that I guess would be one option that you could consider. So if you look at the data, because the data can be sort of confusing, we talk about current enrollment. So we say the students that are in at Kennedy, and we have students that are open enrolled in Kennedy. So you can see there's 3 students that are open enrolled at Kennedy. There's 2 students in 1st grade at GES, and then at Woodview there's 3 students there. Currently there's 75 students that attend Woodview, that would be attending Woodview this year. So if we had option D right now, we'd have 66 kids at Kennedy, we'd have 75 students at Woodview, and there'd be 8 students that would be open enrolled, and that's where they currently attend now, but we'd have to do something with them, and that's sort of how it breaks apart as you go all the way across. You can see that, there's 14, 5, and 21. That's the total of the open enrolled students that you're looking at. So what we tried doing is we took basically these students here and moved them forward a year. So if you're K4, you went to kindergarten. If you're kindergarten, you went to first to second to third, all the way across. We took 5th grade out because 5th grade is going to be in 6th grade next year. So no matter where they go to elementary schools, they're going to John Long next year. So then we said, so attending Kennedy Elementary in 2018-19. So their current school, so students that would be attending Kennedy next year, their current school at Grafton Elementary, there's 9 students that are in the pre-K that would be going to Kennedy. There's 30 students from Grafton Elementary that would be going to kindergarten. There's currently 21 students that would stay at Kennedy, and then there are 2 students coming from Woodview. Okay, and you can keep going. You can jump to 1st grade to be a similar thing. Going to Kennedy from GES is 28. Staying at Kennedy is 32. 2 students from Woodview. Does that make sense? Oh, you want me to keep going, or does everyone have a night? I don't want to beat a dead horse here as you go across there. Woodview is the exact same way. It's set up that way. At Grafton, coming from GES, going to Woodview. In 2nd grade, there's 17 students. Coming from Kennedy in 2nd grade, there's 15 students. And at Woodview, there's 43 students. So that gives you a total of 75. Gives you a total of 66, gives you a total of 75, 53, 65, 75, 70, 56, 64. Okay? If you scroll down, so then we looked at, if we're trying to even out our class sizes and have similar capacities at each of our buildings, then that's where we looked at open enrolled students. So then we would look to say, if there are currently 47 students that would be at Woodview in kindergarten, then we have 4 open enrolled students that would be looking at going to Woodview to make that 51. So there's 53 and 51. There's no open enrolled students in 1st grade, so you have 62 students, just like you do here, and 78 students there. In 2nd grade, you have 74 you have 66, but there's 8 open enrolled students, and since there's 66 and 75, there's a gap. So you would look at adding 8 students to Kennedy, which gives you 74 there and 75 at Woodview. Similar as you go across, there's 53 and 65. There's 2 open enrolled students, so you'd move them up there, so it gets 55 and 65. There's 75 and there's 70. There's 10 open enrolled students total. As you can see up there, 4, 2, and 4. So you would look at 2 students going to Kennedy and 8 students going to Woodview. So you have 77 and 78. And then there's 4 open enrolled students. And because you have 56 and 64, we would recommend moving 4 open enrolled students to Kennedy. So you have 60 and 64 students. So as we look at our numbers, so one of the things obviously that we're watching closely is this class and this class because of the class sizes. And we've talked to principals about that. We haven't traditionally, as we look at our data from 3rd to 4th grade, there hasn't necessarily been an increase of students. There's typically been a decrease of students, so we aren't expecting, there isn't really a pattern to follow with that. So we don't know if we'll get more students in that grade level, but that is something that we're looking at. That would we do, and we do have both building principals have a plan for if we need another classroom, then we would have a classroom space for students for that bubble that would be there. But that's something we currently have 25 kids in a grade level, 26 in one, so that's within where we currently are, but we are watching those closely to see what does that look like. And you can see that we have more open enrolled students as well in those bubble classes, and that's, I assume, I'll make an assumption here, that's because with 3 schools, there was a bubble class, so there was room to, we were already having the teacher, so it made sense to open up open enrollment spaces because you're already paying for the teacher, and so then it still had low class sizes. As you move into 2 sections, it becomes a little bit harder when you already have a bubble. So some of our areas that maybe have smaller numbers overall would be where we're looking for more open enrolled students, but it sort of worked out that way in that situation. Questions?
So we do have a recommendation from the administration that if we're going to consider grandfathering, a limited grandfathering at the 1 grade level. But before we do that, we may or may not agree with that recommendation. We might do something different. But I want to really thank the people who were involved in this, because this was some people came to us with some real issues, and that this is hard on families, and that sort of thing in my history can often be a contentious kind of thing. And this was a really well handled situation, because the group who's doing it and some of the people there that we met with not long ago really handled this well. I really appreciate that, because sometimes that doesn't happen. I appreciate the collegial sort of discourse we've had as we go through this. The chances are there's no solution that's going to make everybody happy. So someone's going to leave the table unhappy tonight. But I do appreciate the fact that this is the way this is supposed to work. People have an issue they brought to the table. Jeff did a ton of work. We met on Thursday, and it was clear that as we went through this, he really has a grasp on this, and so has put together a recommendation that if we make a change, and of course we voted originally not to grandfather. That was of course the original decision. We can change that, and we can maybe go along with what Jeff has said. If you're going to do it, you could do this. That would be reasonable. So that's what's on the table. So we have to decide if somebody wants to make a motion to that effect or to another effect. That's where we're at. But I just wanted to say off the bat, thank you, folks, for how you handled this. This was something that could have been much more difficult. So I appreciate that. But anyway, so with that said, does anybody have any comments on Jeff's presentation or questions?
Jeff, them handling, parents, if we were to grandfather, handling their own transportation, we kind of talked about this. If circumstances change and they can no longer provide their own transportation, even if they sign some sort of waiver, do we know if that would even hold up since we're legally obligated to transport?
Right, and I chose not to reach out to legal counsel to ask that question just because of the cost that it would be. If the board wants to go in that direction, we can do that to reach out. But that's one of that definitely is a concern that I would have as well. As I stated earlier, with even students who would say like, you know, I want to go with so-and-so, and then something else happens, they change their mind. What does that look like? But, so legally, I don't know the answer to that. That is a question. We just chose not to contact legal because of the cost savings, but if we're going to move forward, then that's what we would do, because we'd also have to get we'd have to get a contract approved by legal as well, that would go along with that.
I guess historically I look at what is the essence of a grandfather and why have we grandfathered in the past. In my recollection, 18 years on the board, we grandfathered in the past because of space constraints or because of, several years ago, a desire to reduce busing costs that resulted in a situation that was best served with a grandfathering clause. And, you know, my understanding of the change here, you know, or if I apply those provisions here, this isn't a space constraint issue. I mean, this is a start over type issue. Blank sheet, if you will. So we have neither space constraints nor a cost reduction initiative that are giving rise to the need to grandfather a new requirement in, or new people, new situations versus a long-standing. So I think the decision that we made is the best decision when we look at all the criteria that we laid out for consideration. And we have an opportunity here to eliminate all of the grandfathering. And it makes sense that we do that, in my opinion.
Which is why we didn't recommend, even after listening to the parents, and I would echo what Terry said about parents, and who emailed me or met with me, like all those pieces, bringing up valid points. It's a sensitive topic, I get that, and appreciate their perspective on it, but as we looked at it globally, the macro level, it was like, well, as we dig into that micro piece, grandfathering at various levels is going to cause some imbalances that in the long run is going to create an issue that is not going to, the community is not going to be pleased with when we've promised to get rid of that, with shuttling being an example. So we looked long and hard, we looked at the data, we tried running it different ways, and it really comes down to, because it's a sensitive issue, so where do I draw that, like, where does my sympathy for that sensitive issue stop? And feeling sorry for a certain group when all of GES is being moved. So like those are things that we really struggled with, and we put a lot of time and effort into getting data for the board to be able to look at it objectively, but I realize that it's looking for an objective answer to a really an emotional problem, and that makes it difficult, which we totally understand.
The last time we did some grandfathering, I think Paul and I were the only ones on the board, but you tried to please everybody, and there was such a domino effect that in the end, I think 2 years down the road, we thought we didn't really save any money, and there was unforeseen dominoes that fell that were difficult. Here we can foresee some dominoes already, but even just if we do this limited grandfathering, you just don't know what, like what Jerry said, we don't know what some of these other problems are down the road. So I tend to agree with Paul that especially from experience, I can't see a clear way we can say this is the segment that gets what they'd like, but we cut it off there. I just don't think there's a clear cutoff point.
I have a question. Have we looked into, say, I know Germantown, is it Germantown? Are they doing a grandfathering type thing for the 5th graders? Someone was mentioning that. Harriet, was it you? No.
They're not consolidating, are they?
No, they're not.
The last, they weren't doing that.
No, all their schools are remaining.
I'm aware of that. No.
Oh, okay, I thought it was mentioned that they were doing it for 1 year, but I heard that.
I think they had to move students right before the year began because there was an unexpected number of students that enrolled. So like a week before school began, they sent a letter out to parents saying something along the lines of, you may not be going to that school because we have too many kids there, and they had to shut down classrooms. So I think they had to move kids, is my understanding. Not grandfathering, but just like we thought you'd be able to go to Woodview, but there's not enough space, so now you're going to Kennedy maybe for that year until construction was completed, and then they were coming back there. Okay. That's the only thing I'm aware of. Right before school started, that came out. because they had
Yeah,
a surge. They had a surge in enrollment, I think, after the referendum passed, because they passed in November. They had a surge in enrollment leading up to the beginning of the school year. They hadn't forecasted. I think that was their issue. I'm sorry.
No, I think I mean, I agree with Paul. As a parent of a current child who will be in 5th grade next year, and it will be a year of change for him, and no, I would say it wasn't his first choice, definitely, to be switching, and majority of his class will be going to the other elementary school, but I think it's a good opportunity. And I had said when we voted originally that I like the idea of mixing the schools up, and it's a year earlier is how I tell him, you know, you're all going to be together again in 6th grade. It doesn't mean you can't be friends, you know, for the rest of the time. It's a year of adjustment, but it's a great opportunity to meet more kids, so I think it's a good idea just to, because if you start switching it up, then how do you decide? Because I looked at the numbers, and what if all of them, you know, because we said we wanted to not make it unequal. What if all of them want to go, you know, and I'm like, because I was looking at it and I said, well, if Grafton Elementary School, all of them decide they want to stay together rather than 11 go to Woodview. And then I would say for Kennedy, if they all want to stay together, well, that's 10 and 11, that's 21 more kids that would want to be at Kennedy Elementary School. And there would be 21 less at Woodview Elementary School. And there's only, so the numbers would just become so unequal for even 1 year that it just didn't seem like a good idea. And who knows how the numbers would go. And then I felt, what if you had a child who couldn't? Everyone wants to switch, say 8 of the 10 would switch, but your parent couldn't provide transportation for some reason, then you couldn't switch. So.
Well, I think there's a couple of families, I think we heard of that. Maybe there was only a couple of people going from one school to the next. Or I think going to the First Avenue when we are taking one big group over to Woodview or over to Kennedy, from Kennedy to Woodview. That's a lot of kids going over, whereas I think some of the other ones, like I know in Woodview, there's only 2 people going to Kennedy as opposed to a big group. So I think that's really difficult for them.
Yeah.
So that's why I know we were talking, not we, but it was suggested maybe if a couple of kids swapped. I'm just putting it out there.
I get it, because that was the number I was looking at, is
Right,
that
'cause
there
there was
are
just
only
2.
2. And I was thinking, what about those 2? But if you open it up, what do we
Right.
say?
No,
Those
I
2,
agree.
and then it's the 2 open enrolled kids who had bet it would be who would have to switch, you know? So is it those 4? But then if you make an exception for those 4, well then what about, it's
just
not
that-
always equal, because you could say there's only 2 boys going
Okay,
from one of the schools, you know?
For 5th grade, there's 2 kids that will be in 5th grade, at least according to these numbers, that will go from Woodview to Kennedy. And 5th grade next year from Kennedy to Woodview would be 10 kids. And from, right, from Kennedy to Woodview, there would be 10. 10 or 11, well, the numbers that I looked at last.
GES is 10. GES is 10,
GES.
and Kennedy is 11.
GS has 10, right.
Yep.
And 31 would go to Kennedy. So I'm just saying there would, for that like one little part,
For those
there's
2
just the 2
students.
students. So I just thought that was like,
I do think, I mean, you brought up GES, and I don't know how we could do it and not give the GES kids the option as well,
Right.
right? I mean, I
And
think
that's what
I'm
was in
fair,
the
yeah.
original.
I mean, to Carrie's point,
But
most
given-
of them are going to Kennedy.
Right.
You're,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so we,
You have 10 though going to Woodview. That'll be in 5th
Correct.
grade. That'll be in 5th grade.
right.
So that's a
21.
decent chunk.
Yeah. That
Right.
makes- And then,
It's not big equal boys and girls, but.
yeah.
But that's 10 as opposed to 2. So I'm just kind of weighing those options.
And as part of our recommendation, we do realize, because we did also look at the fact that there's open enrolled students that have been placed in a building that may be able to stay in that building just because they've been placed there to help with space needs in the past. Doesn't mean that they're being placed over district students. District students are our #1 priority. They're being moved wherever we have space at, but there will be an instance where, you know, with the 4 students that currently attend Kennedy, 2 of them would be staying. That's where they've been placed to balance it. It doesn't mean we're putting them over the resident students. Resident students are our #1 priority. but that's because that's what the space issue dictates. So we did even look at, you talk about switching, what if we had those kids move to a different school, and then we had a lottery for resident kids to say, well, we have room for 4 kids, so if you're being moved, we'll select 4. I mean, you get into the whole thing that Carrie's talking about as well, then parents have to say, can I transport, can I not?
What if you have other kids?
What if you have other kids, so then
Right.
would they be eliminated? So we did really try and look at this and tried taking the parents' concerns that they brought to us and really try and work with that. But there was other concerns that we'd had as we looked deeper into the data of what that would mean long-term for us. But we do recognize that.
It's going to be a tough year no matter what decision we make. There's always going to be that family that it really is tougher on them. It's never 100% equal.
Well, and to that point, because it's going to be a tough year, I'd rather see administration spend its time in maximizing the transition and minimizing the impact on any student for the benefit of every student every day, as opposed to figuring out rules for grandfathering and contracts for grandfathering and how that might work this year, next year, the year into the future. I'd rather any hours spent on this issue be spent on a most successful transition at every building, as opposed to how to make it so that we don't have to, or we can push that transition off. Spend the time making sure it's the best transition.
Okay, so I'm getting a direction where the board feels like they're going to go. I'm going to break with protocol a little bit here because I know there's parents here who wanted to hear this discussion and have things to say about it. In the past, sometimes we had a public comments at the beginning. We waited until we had the discussion here and then offered another chance for public comments in case parents want to weigh in, because I want people to feel like they didn't have a chance. I know you had a lot of chance to talk with us and with Jeff, but Sarah, you have been more of a spokesperson probably than anyone else on this. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we vote on this?
Yeah, thank you for...
Please use the mic, please.
Oh, sure. Hi, Sarah McCraw, 1244 Audubon Avenue. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to say something right now and for bringing this up on the agenda tonight. There's a couple things that I would like to point out for you to think about since we're all thinking about this right now. One, please look at what Mr. Nelson brought specifically, which is that he's saying if you were to do anything, that it would be for the 4th grade, right? So the kids who are in currently 4th grade right now going into 5th grade. Put yourself in those family shoes for like 2 seconds. If you had a kid who went to, say, Woodview for 5 years, and then they found out, like, you're that situation, right? And now it's 1 year, they got to go to another school, and then they're going to go to middle school. I think if you were to consider this, that would be very nice for those few families that would affect, right? Let's just let them finish out that last year at Kennedy or Woodview, and then we'll ship them off to the middle school. The other thing, though, that I want you guys to please consider would be the IEP families, the few students in each grade that are on IEPs. Think of the work that they've put in with their therapists, with their teachers, with their growing that network, whether it's you do a grandfather situation, a lottery, or an intra-district transfer option for those families. I think the students who are on the IEPs, who particularly have worked really hard with their families and their teachers and their therapists to grow a comfortable environment, should be given the opportunity to stay in that comfortable environment that they worked so hard to build. So if I'm going to sit up here and rally for any family, those are the families that I really want to rally for. But also, like, just the logistics of the 4th graders. I get it. Like, out of all the grades that you're going to allow this for, I think 4th grade going into 5th, let them finish out that 1 year. But thank you for working with the parents. I very much appreciate that. And allowing us to be heard and to have a voice with our school board and our elected officials. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Is it, if there's anyone else that has something to say other than what Sarah said, feel free.
My name is Jen Shimon. We give our address, Is that right? 1512 Audubon Avenue. I've been working along with Sarah as well, and I guess I just was looking for a clarification. I know in the past in our meetings we've talked a lot about grandfathering, and we're realizing all the complications with that. I guess we were wondering with intra-district transfers, that's a different language, if there's the same domino effect with that, because with the transfers our understanding is that it would be you'd have to reapply for that every year. You'd have to give up your transportation. I don't know if our families would want that as an option if they had to look at that year after year, but I guess that's something Sarah and I had talked about after our meetings with you, would that be a possibility, and is there a domino effect to that as well that maybe we're not aware of or haven't thought of? I guess that's it. Thanks.
Sure. And just one second, okay? Since that's on the table, tell us, what have you thought about intra-district transfers? We really haven't talked about that. Have you guys looked at that? Do we know how many people that would involve? Do you have anything you can tell us about that, Jeff?
We've not had a discussion about intra-district transfers. It would be a similar situation where you'd be looking at different classes, and we'd basically be setting. You'd probably have to set a minimum. You'd have to set a maximum pretty early, and then that maximum would have to be very conservative so that if people moved in, that they would have their space. And because it's one thing to say, like, we're going to give you an inter-district transfer, and then, like, similar to another district at the end of August, we're telling you, by the way, you have to go back to your district. That might cause some angst for students. So we haven't had a lot of discussion about that. Larger districts typically do that because there are some flexible spacing things that they can handle with that. But we have not put a ton of time and effort into the inter-district transfer.
If you did it just for people with IEPs, that would reduce. I'm not talking about necessarily across the board, just like looking for people to volunteer a spot or something like that. But could we look at any? If you haven't looked at that yet, we don't have the numbers to even a ballpark of that sort of thing.
No, but what currently, special ed staff travel between buildings based on need. And so when a student has a strong relationship with a staff member and that student is going to be transferred, at times that staff member will follow with. So IEPs are set up based on minutes that they need, and then we staff according to that. So whether there's more students at Kennedy or more students at Woodview or more students at GES, we look at the need and the personalities and what we had that happen this year with a staff member who transferred from one building to another based on a relationship with the student as well as the need that was going to be occurring. So that can occur now and does occur and will continue to occur no matter what we would do with inter-district transfers or anything else like that.
Where are those transfers covered? By virtue of policy or handbook or?
Well, I haven't looked at the policies to give you that answer. I don't believe it's in policy, but we'd have to look for that. You'd be chartering new territory that would go with that. It's other districts to do that, so it wouldn't be that you'd be the only ones doing that.
So this is a concept new to the district, or new in a formal sense that prior to this it would have been covered under the guise of grandfathering. Yes?
Right, and when we met, that wasn't something that we talked about, and I haven't heard that till now, in all honesty. Mm-hmm. So like, I haven't put time into that. We talked about all the different options for class sizes, keeping class sizes to be as equal as possible, affecting open enrollment, looking at grandfathering, looking at moving students. District transfer would be very similar to that. Because theoretically, you could say that to open enrolled kids on a yearly basis. You could say you're assigned to Kennedy, and now but now next year there isn't space, so now we're going to move you to Woodview. That you can do it every year. That doesn't seem to be in the best interest of the student to do that. So most districts don't do that because that'd be a very difficult situation to be doing that on a yearly basis. So unless you could guarantee that student's going to be able to stay in that grade level, that'd be a difficult piece, and it would be a lottery because you would need to be able to do that and have a waiting list and all those pieces. I think that'd be my recommendation, at least, is how you'd handle it. Similar, we looked at the 5th grade piece and the different variables that would go with that, contacting parents, giving them a deadline to fill it out, reminding them to fill it out, letting them know we're doing this and then going through those steps.
So how would we have handled the students with IEPs before this discussion if we would have just went with Plan D, no grandfathering? How would the teachers, schools, and principals, how would they have worked together to make as smooth of a transition for those kids as possible?
So like we do now, as we move students from the EC program, as we look to move students from 5th grade to 6th grade, as we look to move students from 8th grade to 9th grade, there's transition meetings that occur, and that we have the teachers from the current school meeting with teachers at the receiving school, making sure those students, the special qualities of that student, the things that are both positive and the areas for improvement are made sure that they're understood before the year begins, and you have those meetings to make sure that what are the things that are in place for that student to be successful, and are there added things that we need and that go with it. So that's, which is going to be accelerated, or accelerated isn't the right word, but which is going to be occurring for all of our students for next year that are going to be moving. So typically in 1st grade, you have the 2 1st grade teachers meet with their principal to say, like, well, we're looking at these students and we think these students should be together next year, and these students might be best for them not be together. That'll be occurring again for next year, but now it may be they're going to another school, so you're going to have 3 schools getting together to talk about 2 schools' placements. So we're going to be looking at all students, like, and making sure that they, as best as we can, making sure they are partnered up with someone that is a friend. There is going to need to be some front-end loading over the summer with classes getting together and doing some of those things. Principals have talked about that, and engaging teachers so that students have an opportunity to get off to a great start. So that's what we've been planning ever since this occurred, and that's what we continue to do. Whether it's students with IEPs or our regular ed students, the IEP students have to have that occur. They have that benefit, and that occurs now. And as I said, like, that's where the staffing issues and, well, what personality is going to work best with this student. Him or her may respond differently to a male, a female, younger, older, whatever it may be. How do we help them be successful?
We have one more hand up here. Did you want to say something new?
Sure. My name is Kent Hansen. I'm on 778 Wolf Creek Court, so way out that way. Our son attends Woodview Elementary today, 4th grade. We're going into 5th grade. So I'll be first to admit I appreciate the simplicity of the option D, right? Just get it restricted and done. However, also from, I guess today I'll be representing 50% of the 2 kids moving from Woodview to Kennedy. Our son is our 4th child, the last one, I hope. Please. 5th grade is a difficult year, right? It's right before you go into middle school. There's a lot of change. And my fear is not only do you move, will he have to move school? I'm not so much concerned about the friend things. They still make friends really easy at that age. It's the familiar surroundings, the teachers, the whole thing around it. So I appreciate you guys looking at the options again and considering it. Again, and especially I would say considering the current 4th graders going into 5th grade, I do feel that that is a huge transition year. And I also, obviously the people that are going today to Grafton Elementary will have to deal with that. But looking at the numbers, there's a good chance they will be moving somewhere with friends, at least somebody who is comfortable, they're comfortable around, that will help with that transition. My selfish perspective, we're talking about 2 kids. So at least if we could have the option, I'm not even saying that we would, right? That is still some months away to make that decision, but at least if we had the option of staying, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so it's time for us to put a motion on the table. It can be whatever you want to recommend. We have the recommendation from the administration that if you're going to do something, do this only. We could do nothing, no change at all, and it seems like that's clearly the direction we were going before we open it up again, but we just need a motion on the table so we can move on.
I move to accept the administrative recommendation regarding grandfathering such that there is no grandfathering to be considered, and the boundaries as designed and approved be used as the boundaries for the 2018-19 school district.
A second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. Thank you all for coming in, for weighing in. I appreciate that. I know it's not an easy thing to hear tonight. But we have to move on to our next agenda item.
All right, so as Paul mentioned, that at our last finance committee, we had Horton come and present their recommendation for renewing our health, dental, vision, life, and disability insurance. First of all, with our health insurance, they presented an option with a 0% premium renewal. They also discussed the potential of self-insuring, and they were recommending that we remain fully insured. And primarily because the cost of self-insuring
were known, were fairly fixed, versus sort of the unknowns of being self-insured, which could be upwards of potentially another $700,000 potentially in premiums, or in costs, I should say. The dental insurance they presented as a 4% renewal. Delta had been proposing a 5%, but they worked it down to a 4% renewal. Both our life insurance and our long-term disability premiums are coming in with a 0% increase. Vision, which is a voluntary benefit with no cost to the district, the employee bears the entire cost. That came in at a 3% renewal. And then our short-term disability, which is also a voluntary benefit. Again, the entire cost is borne by the employee. There is no cost to the district. And that came in at a 0% premium increase. And if we jump ahead to the next slide, as we sort of talk about some of the issues around health and dental benefits. And this was a slide presented early in the year, talked about somewhat during the referendum effort with regard to what the district has done and how it's used Act 10 to reduce the costs of health and dental benefits in the district. Before Act 10, we were paying over $5 million for our health and dental expenditures, and we have decreased that every year through a variety of means. We've had employees pay in a portion of the premium. We have made design changes. We have also restricted the employees that are eligible for the benefits. And because of this, we have cut our health and dental expenditures by $1.9 million since Act 10. So again, getting back to the recommendation, the board has recommended to the full board, I should say the Finance Committee has recommended to the full board that we accept the Horton's recommendation for the renewal on these policies. But I open it up to any questions that anyone might have.
Okay. Since there's no questions, we have a administrative recommendation.
Well, and for the record, there was a lot of questions at the Finance Committee. So this was a long discussion from Horton. A booklet was given, and so just so the audience, if they watch this later, there was a lot of discussion on this topic with various points that were made by board members and looking ahead long term. But that's what, but the recommendation was made, so I'll just.
And I think just a couple of things
Yeah.
to keep in mind. So, yeah, the Finance Committee is recommending to move forward with this renewal, which is a very favorable renewal on its face. I think along with this renewal, there would be no change in contribution rates for employees, right? That
Correct.
would stay the same.
No design plan changes.
No plan design changes. But we spent a fair amount of time talking about, the time when these costs will invariably start creeping up. And, we're hit with an 8% or a 10% increase or a 6% increase. And in beginning a dialogue with the employees that we've been holding this flat and level, and it's been good, but that may not be sustainable into the future. And we need to start a dialogue about how those increases, what those increases might look like into the future. We also talked about cash in lieu. Is that is part of this? That would stay as is right now, or no change in?
Correct, yeah.
Change
Well,
in
it's
the
not a
change.
renewal piece. It is, that was part of our discussions as well, looking at some of the data from surrounding districts and the trends. And it was also the feeling, and it is in the budget that will be presented in the next agenda item, that the cash in lieu remain at the $3,000 after having dropped $1,000 a year for each of the past 2 years.
And I think the other piece that's relevant to this particular slide is, you may recall early in the year that the governor's budget, or the per pupil increase at one point was perhaps tied to, or the district's ability to share in that per pupil increase was tied to that district's having its employees paid 12.6%. Our average contribution rate is just short of 12, but we have met and likely exceeded, and according to Horton, well exceeded in their book of business, the overall objectives of ACTAN and the corresponding cost savings in these premiums, as this chart indicates. And I think that is a remarkable accomplishment over the time, and just as a testament of the constituents on the redistricting working closely with the board, our employees working very closely with the board, and understanding that these are changes that we need to make, and we make them with regard to each of the individual employees and mindful of the long-term impact. And that's why, understanding what increases might be into the future and how they impact, we need to do that. We need to be sharing that with our employees on a regular basis, because it's important.
Well, and I think the results that we have are a reflection of our employees' good habits and taking this to heart, and that's why it's at a 0%. So hats off to them.
That's a great point. You're right, Mark. Hats off to them.
Okay, thanks. So we need a motion to accept the administrative recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. So we will move on to what Topher just alluded to, the 17-18 final budget approval and certification of the tax levy.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and present the recommendation from the Finance Committee for our final budget for 2017-18, as well as our final levy certification. And that night we spent a good, I'd say, hour 45 minutes just discussing these two topics. The new information that we received in October regarding our budget, the October 1st equalized property values came out. They increased 3.24% as opposed to the 3.31% that we were using at the annual meeting. If this were the only change that had occurred, it would have had a 1 cent increase on the mill rate. That would have been the impact. But there were other changes, not surprisingly. Our 3-year membership average did drop from 2,040 to 2,030 members. The private school choice exemption in our revenue limit increased $29,000 as a result of participation increasing from 11 students to 15 students. The final revenue limit ultimately increased $160,000 as compared to our annual meeting estimate. Our equalization aid, however, increased $120,000 from that July 1 estimate, which we were using at the annual meeting. This means a levy increase of about $40,000. And as we move on to the next slide, we'll also see that we had an increase in our open enrollment out budget expenditures of $23,000 and a decrease in the open enroll in revenue of $48,000. We also had a flat health insurance renewal, which at the time of the annual meeting we were using a 6% increased estimate. And then we've also updated and aligned our grant budgets. So taking a look at the budget with the revenues, you can see the increase in our property taxes of nearly $544,000. Now this would have been about $944,000 if we had not levied an additional $400,000 into Fund 41 instead of Fund 10, and this is to fund the soccer portion of our athletic field project. And so you'll notice when we look at the expenditures next, those expenditure increases are $400,000 more than our revenues, because we are in fact budgeting for a $400,000 spend down in our fund balance. Had we not done that, our property taxes portion of our revenues would have increased about $944,000. And you can see that a good portion of that is because of that drop in equalization aid of about $765,000. Again, we ended up receiving about $120,000 more in equalization aid than we had been expecting at the time of the annual meeting. The big addition to our revenues would be that per pupil aid. That was increased from $250 per pupil to $450 per pupil in this 2017-18 budget. That nets us about $404,000 more than the prior year. So again, overall, our revenues increased $127,000 when compared to last year. And so you can see our expenditures are going up $527,000 over last year. The most notable bucket here that is increasing would be the purchase services. We have increases in sub costs, our utilities, as well as at private school choice enrollment. That is considered a purchased service. So that's going, that's an increase of from roughly $83,000 to about $110,000. It's going up $29,000. That falls in as a purchase service. And overall, expenditures are increasing about $527,000. Then moving on to looking at how our tax levy is calculated, as well as our revenue limit. This is what we had been looking at during our annual meeting, using this this expectation that would result in the lowest revenue limit possible. So that looking at 2017 membership, replacing the 2014 membership with a 2038 number. But the actual number that came in was 2009. And this gives us a drop in our 3-year average of 10 students. And on the next slide, you'll see that this was actually the example that was being used, not a prediction, but an example that was being used to explain what would happen if we were to lose students. We would actually get an increased amount of money available in the revenue limit. That bottom example of a decrease of 10 students in our 3-year average does result in a base revenue limit calculation drop of $105,000. That's replaced with that hold harmless piece, which brings it back up to last year's base revenue, and then the declining enrollment exemption increases it another roughly $105,000. That's where we see that increase in our revenue limit. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see another increase in our revenue limit comes from that private school choice exemption. So again, we had an increased number of students participating. So instead of an exemption from last year of $86,000, we get an exemption of $115,000. Now, while that increases our revenue available, that is canceled out with an expenditure. So that $115,000 roughly that we are able to levy for in our revenue limit, that money then basically is taken out of our state aid and sent to the participating choice schools. And if we go to the next slide, so that's where we get those, our revenue limit calculation of about $21,630,000, which is about $160,000 higher than the estimate we were using at the annual meeting. Then we take our state aid, subtract that out of the revenue limit, and we come up with our levy authority of about $15,700,000, roughly $92,000. And if we look at the next slide, we can see where that levy authority goes. We use it in Fund 10, Fund 38, and then Fund 41. Again, that's that $450,000. Normally we levy $50,000. That extra $400,000 is being used for that soccer field portion of the athletic field project. Otherwise, that would have been levied into Fund 10, and we would have no change budgeted in our fund balance. Outside the revenue limit, we have our Fund 39 debt levy of just under $2.9 million for an all-fund tax levy of about $18.6 million. And on the next slide, we'll see that within our Fund 39 levy, we have a little over $1 million that is going to pay for pre-existing debt. We have $1,255,000 going to make payments on our July 6th debt issue. And then we also have $600 and almost $34,000 that is being levied for a special fall of 2018 payment on the debt that we plan on issuing later in 2018. Baird had been projecting that we would only be able to levy about $616,000 toward that special fall payment. But because of the way the October numbers shook out, we're able to levy nearly $634,000 to apply against that debt that we'll be levying later in 2018, and still see a 66-cent increase in the mill rate overall. And the next slide shows what happens when we take our all-fund levy and apply that against the equalized value in the district. That's our mill rate of $11.27 this year. The next slide will show the impact on taxes. And so for every $100,000 of property value, we would see an increase of $66 on your property tax bill. And I believe there might be another slide, or it might be just questions. Questions, yes. Any questions on that?
Just to clarify, the Fund 41 levy.
Yes.
You stated it, but I don't want people to get this notion that we're levying that extra $400,000 just because. It would have been levied into Fund 10.
Right.
So it's not like it could have not happened.
Right. We would not have. This is basically acting as a transfer from fund balance into Fund 31. We wouldn't just throw out a budget that spent $400,000 of fund balance without it being a one-time expense. This is a one-time expense, something we don't have to repeat year after year, and basically acts as a transfer from Fund 10, the fund balance in Fund 10, to 41. And it's just an advantage in how it will minimize impact to shared costs. It will minimize loss of state aid over the next few years.
Any other questions? We need to do this in two steps, right? We need a motion for the approval for the budget first, correct? We can't put them both in the same motion, can we?
I think you can motion to approve both, to approve it and to certify the tax lien.
Okay. So a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
No further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. Thanks, Topher. Excellent presentation. Are you still up? Tax and revenue anticipation notes?
Yep, that's me. I got one more thing here. So this is basically, we have since 2009, we've been working with Port Washington State Bank to take out basically a line of credit to meet, to short-term borrow so that we can meet payroll. Typically this occurs in November. We fall short because basically most of our revenue comes in January in the form of property taxes, but obviously at the beginning of the school year, starting in July, and especially when the school year kicks in, we're paying out a significant portion of our payroll. So we've been borrowing since 2009. This year, instead of a line of credit, it's going to be a tax and revenue anticipatory note. The reason for the change is that the regulatory agencies don't like the idea that a line of credit would allow for repeated borrowing of the same money. This will act in much the same way. We'll be able to borrow when we need it, pay it back when we don't, and we won't be paying interest on it when we aren't borrowing it. So we're only going to have to pay interest when we are actually borrowing the money. So we're going to take out basically the same line of credit that we have, not a line of credit. We'll have access to the same amount of funds as we have in years past, with an interest rate of 3%. And I've included some of the history, at least last year, of some of the costs of what the short-term borrowing has been. So we'd be looking for an approval of this resolution, and we have the signed documents that we can get to the bank so that we can get this put in place, likely to be used for our November 15th payroll.
There's a motion to approve the recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions for Topher?
The one thing that Topher and I talked about earlier today is the rate on this instrument is 3%. The rate on the line of credit historically has been last year was 2.49.
Yes, I reached out and I asked John, I asked that he give me an explanation, because I figured the board would ask, either an explanation of why it was going up to 3%, or just give me, 2.5%, whichever was easiest. He gave me the explanation that over the past year, the benchmark that they use for these kinds of interest rates has increased 0.75%, and that we would only be getting a 0.5% increase on that.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Thanks, Topher. You bet. So a Summer Learning Academy report.
Yep, I will take that on. So as you see in your handout, we had 28 academic courses offered for our Summer Learning Academy. You can see it addresses the areas of math and reading in K through 5, elementary reading intervention, and then also high school credit recovery in math, English, American government, and U.S. history. So we had 229 sections of 111 enrichment classes offered. So there was an increase of 16 sections of 9 classes from the previous year. You can see the 30 new courses that were offered, ranging from dinosaurs, art and the environment, to games from around the world, Let's Sing on Broadway, Rise and Shine Yoga, some really great enrichment opportunities for students. We continue to show high enrollment. On the back side of the sheet, you can see that 4 years ago when we started offering K-8 courses for all 6 weeks, we started to see more students enroll, and then you've seen a drop off, but then you're seeing a gradual increase towards that number. But the beautiful thing, the great to see, is the courses taken. So you can see that is rising. Maybe there are less students than that occurred in the 2014, but the number of courses that students are taking. So kudos to our staff. Shireen Mortag leads this. She hires teachers for it. She does a great job with it. She's working with CARE in the past. Rick has an integral part in that. Our principals help supervise that during the summer. Elementary principals do. But those enrichment opportunities for students, as well as those academic course offerings, we believe are meeting the needs of our students, and we're always looking for ways to improve that. Obviously for this year, we'll be looking at what does that look like because of construction. We're working with Hoffman now, looking ahead to being able to utilize we won't be able to utilize Woodview, where in the past we've utilized Woodview and John Long, and so we're already planning. The planning team has met and discussed that. We're trying to be creative with being able to offer this, because it's obviously a valued thing for our families, and especially this year with summer even being longer, we don't want to reduce the summer opportunities that parents may really want their kids to be able to continue utilizing either as an academic option or as an enrichment offering. But you can see that on the front we talk about the fiscal impact. It does help our overall bottom line. but more importantly, students are engaged, enjoying the experience, and it's providing a good service to our parents.
Do you have any idea when it might start?
I do.
Okay.
I can tell you that. Let me find that email. Email sent how about I come back to that, and I will, when someone else is talking, I will find it. Kara, do you remember that?
Yeah, I'll be able to.
Right, I just sent that out. Because we've been working with Hoffman on that, and they gave us a couple different options. I can't find it, so hopefully Kara can find it. We will get that for you, because we just set that this past week.
June 11th.
June 11th, we start.
And will it be 6 weeks like in the past?
Yep, so we have it. Can you give the timeline?
The first 2 weeks are June 11th through the 21st. Then the next session, session B, is going to be divided. So it's June 25th through 28th. And then the week with July 4th in it is off. And then the second week of session B will be July 9th through 12th. And then session C is July 16th through 26th.
So we just set that, because there's a couple different dates for that. Working with Hoffman, they felt like earlier, because it could have gone a little later, with school getting out. We sort of kept with that window of giving time in between that, but then having that start. Yep.
Just historically, we've looked at this as a budget neutral endeavor. I think that's been the sentiment, at least, that this be a budget neutral endeavor. And I'm just trying, in the budget, the unaudited results this year were $108,000 in cost, summer school salary. Are there other revenue streams other than?
There were fees. I'd have to look up what the summer school fees collected were.
And I'm not looking to diminish the value to families and the fact that we've increased the academic and enrichment opportunities. But I know historically, if you go back, before we put an emphasis on this, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, was looked at one of those things that, well, this is nice, but it should be budget neutral.
This would add, though, 5 FTE for 3 years. So it would be over 3 years, because of what we did just in this one summer, it would add, we would receive, would be available to receive over $150,000. Because next year, that will be responsible for 5 FTE in our 3-year average, as well as the following year.
Is that the way to look at it?
Yeah. Because they won't fall out for the next 3 years. Those kids, those summer school kids, are still going to be in our membership average, used to calculate our revenue limit.
But every year, aren't we talking about the change year over year from the previous 3 year to the new 3 year?
Oh, sure, but let's say we discontinued. We discontinued
I would agree.
it.
Yes, if we discontinued it. I'm not by any means proposing to discontinue.
No, I know, but we would drop, let's use this year as an example. So next year, our 3-year average would be 5 less. The next year would drop 5 more.
Right.
And the next year would drop 5 more, so that would be 15. Our 3-year average would be 15 members lower 3 years later if we discontinue
3 years
summer
after.
membership.
Yes. Okay.
Are you talking about increasing fees to help cover the cost?
No, I think there's a requirement. You can't do that. I guess if you look at the unaudited cost from this year, or the year that just ended, to the previous year, they're up nearly 20%. And next year, we're budgeting them to be down about 8% or 9%.
And I think our membership has been increasing. My belief would be that as you increase the number of students, you're probably also increasing the offerings and the number of people.
But so I'm just saying we should be mindful. So how many kids do you have to have in an offering before it's not viable?
Well, and we've had that discussion this year. about that. And whether good or bad, the construction process has brought to light that question. And so we've had that discussion to say, like, well, okay, these are classes, did we offer this, did we not offer this, why would we offer it with that number of students? Do we have a break even? So that has come to light because of the construction piece, and will continue to be brought to light as we look to sort of establish a process for when do we say, well, you're not going to be able to do this, but here are some other things. We reach out to parents to say, here are the other offerings that are available, but there's only 4 kids signed up, so we can't offer that. Now that'd be different than for our academic intervention classes, that we really, for our students, that we really need to see not have that summer slide, but looking at enrichment classes is how we would differentiate that, and we have had that conversation and very clearly articulated expectations moving forward to be able to help with that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks. We'll move on to the GHS food science equivalency process.
So Diana is at a conference at the Corwin Institute in Chicago for assessment. She's there today and tomorrow. And so our next 2 items, Mr. Manti is going to present on the food service equivalency, and then him and Ms. Seibel, they're going to speak on the state ACT and board exam report. So I'll turn it over to Scott.
Yes, so I'm here to talk about the food science equivalency process that the Brenda Stilo has been leading and working through with our science department. Beginning in the 2016-17 school year, we offered a food science course. It's a half-credit course at Grafton High School. And moving through that process of approval of the course, one of the things that Brenda spoke to the board about was trying to also achieve equivalency of science credit with that class. So a team has been developed, and that work has been complete in terms of completing a crosswalk of standards between family and consumer science and our science standards, both Wisconsin state standards at that level. And basically what that means is it's now ready to be submitted with board approval first, in terms of having that course count as a half-credit science elective to be utilized as a graduation requirement. Why would we look to do this? This provides students with another option in the areas of science. Last year we brought really earth science electives back to the forefront. So we have earth science electives for our students, we have physical science electives, environmental science electives, and this will really be the final piece of that puzzle, which is the food science course that Brenda is now teaching in her 2nd year of completing. In addition to providing you with the crosswalk, we gave you a description of the process that had been used, and then also a letter from DPI which gave you a little more information about the process. Really the only piece that we want to be aware of is that as far as counting this toward admission into college, for example, our counselors just need to be aware of, the college counting that or not counting that toward an actual science credit for college preparation. That's the only thing that I wanted the board to be aware of. Otherwise, as far as state graduation requirement is concerned, no issues with that whatsoever. So it's an equivalency process developed by DPI. It's trying to encourage, for example, the Family and Consumer Science Department to partner with another area, in this case the Science Department, to bring more opportunities for kids. And that's what we're proposing and looking for your approval on tonight, so we could send this off to DPI and have them take a look at the crosswalk that we've completed together.
Any questions for Scott?
Can you go over that again for the counselors, what the counselors need to know? It may not count?
So the counselors need to be aware of the fact that this may not be considered by some colleges or universities as a college preparatory science course. So as students are planning, and if they're using this as part of their 3rd science credit for graduation, our counselors need to be in close communication with our students to make sure that that they're looking into that in advance or ahead of time. Okay, so that's the piece of it that they clearly reference here in this letter, for you as well. So that's an ongoing process that our counselors would need to be aware of.
And we have a process in place. to ensure that that happens?
We will be, so as with any college that our students are pursuing, that we would be looking into that with our students to making sure that they're making the right decision overall and on our transcripts, so.
It'll be so college-specific that the counselors will have to work with them. I mean, UW-Madison would not accept this as their third year of science. Would UW-Milwaukee? I don't know. Like, you know, that's what the letter references. They're working with UW Systems, trying to figure that out. But private universities would be the same way. They may or may not. And it just be to be aware of people making that informed choice.
Right.
And that's that whole academic career planning, junior counseling meetings, all those meetings that counselors have with students and with parents along the way.
Right, absolutely. It's really a part of the overall process. But I thought fair to bring up for the board so you have all the information that you need to make a decision.
So to that point, Scott, maybe clearly they're going to change their mind, or they're going to decide one day I want to go here. Is it fair to say that somebody looking to go to Madison or Wash U or an Ivy League school, they're probably not going to. They're probably going to be looking for a more rigorous option than this anyway?
This could be taken in addition to more rigorous options. So I would certainly say that this does not exclude any of our high-achieving students from taking this course. I mean, this is still a course that could be on the transcript, but they may choose to take all the way through AP Chem, AP Physics, but really have an interest in this food science piece as well. So yeah, on top of. But yeah, so I would say that's how I'd approach that for those type of students.
So is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved. Second.
Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Thanks, Scott.
Yep. Thank you very much, everybody.
We have an ACT and Ford exam report.
I'm Diana Proxy today here, so I didn't have my wig on, and she's at the Corwin Institute in Chicago. But we're going to cover the Ford exam and the ACT, and a lot of these slides, a lot of this material was covered earlier this month in October. And I'm trying to think, I think all board members except for one were at that meeting, or was everyone there? I'm trying to think. Okay. So first, do ask a question if I gloss over something at the end. Looking at the ACT and the Ford exams that were taken last spring, the Ford, again, is 3rd grade through 8th grade for math and reading, and then there's those points where they do social studies and science at 4th, 8th, and then 10th. And then the ACT, which is done statewide for the last 3 years in the state of Wisconsin for all 11th graders. We also do an ACT Aspire test for 9th and 10th graders, but Scott is going to be covering the statewide ACT test. We're going to highlight the scores and some comparison of the data from last year and also with surrounding districts. So first thing we're going to cover is the Ford exam. This is our 2nd year of doing the Ford exam. The year before that, we did the Badger exam. Those last 3 years, those are common core line exams that are aligned with many states across the nation. And before that, we were doing WKCE for about 20 years. So the Ford exam stayed the same. So whatever data we compare from 15, 16 to 16, 17 is apples to apples comparison with Forward. Some of the highlights. Our district is in an area of high performance. Many of the districts around in Ozaukee County are high performing, and Grafton, compared to the rest of the state, is higher than other surrounding districts. There is a change, positive change of 0.15% for our reading or English language arts or ELA scores, and 20% less than the state in below and basic. So the other districts that are below and basic, and as an improvement of a change of plus 3% from 2016. So our ELA scores have improved over last year, and we're doing better when compared to the rest of the state. And for math, You can see I'll switch between the slides. Here's 19 and 20 for ELA, and those are good numbers. It gets a little tighter for math, and we discussed this at length in the earlier October meeting. Math is an area of concern. Again, because we're compared to the rest of the state with this, we are higher than the state in proficient advanced, and that's a positive change actually from our forward performance in prior years. The last year, 1.6 higher, and then with the 13.8% less than the state in the numbers of percent of below and basic, and that's a change of -3% from 2006. All grade levels scored at least 13% higher than the state in ELA and at least 8% higher than the state in math. Again, you can see that bringing together a little tighter performance between our students compared to the state for math. ELA is better. All grade levels of each building scored higher than the state in ELA as proficient. All grade levels except for one in each building scored higher than the state in math as proficient. Now, one of the misconceptions with this performance too, when you look at it, is it gives you a grade in 4 different quadrants of below basic, or you're basic, you're proficient, and you're advanced. And so you immediately think, well, the below basic is if you scored 0 to 25th in your percentile and 25 to 50th in your percentile to be basic. That's not what's going on here. It's a criterion reference test. So it has a set of questions of expectations of, at a national level, if you're going to be advanced in this area, you're going to answer this question or these numbers of questions in a certain way. And so you're going to see in the state there that the majority of the students, over 50%, are actually below basic or basic. So it's not a 0 to 50 and then 50 to 100. In fact, when you go behind the difficulties of questions, to be advanced really starts at a state level of around 90% to 100 to 99% of the students in the state. And they norm it to national norms then, so it's really almost like 0 to 60 of the students are nationally are either basic or below basic. So looking at this, you can see a variance of how the students at Grafton performed last spring, grade-wise for ELA and compared to the state. Again, there's where we were talking about the 19 to 20% percentage points better than the state. If we look at now that apples-to-apples comparison between 2016 and 2017 in ELA, again, we're doing better, and we are performing, the different grade levels are performing better than the grade level from last year. So this is 7th graders last year of 54%, and then in ELA at 8th grade, 62% were advanced or proficient. One thing to notice, and I'm going to point this out right away, is that we do have number of students in 7th grade, and we anticipate that in 8th grade, and a few in 5th and 3rd. We anticipate that in 4th and 6th grade next year of opting out of the test. As of now, no test score data does not negatively affect us on the report card or in any way in the test. It's just scores that we could have had are not included in our aggregate. We switch to math now. So this is how we did last spring compared to the state. There is a general waterfall effect as the test gets more difficult. The state here already up to 63% of the state of students are either basic or below basic. At Grafton, we barely over 50% for this 8th grade level. That's an improvement over last year, and we can see this here. Last year we had an anomaly that we were really concerned about as the students, and Jeff correctly reported this at our meeting a few weeks ago. When those students took the Aspire last year, it was not the same as this. This was an anomaly. Those students performed much better on the ACT Aspire in math as 9th graders. But a concern overall is these, if I go back to that state, we're a little closer to the state in math than we are, and you can quickly see it here when you compare to ELA, where we are much higher. Okay, moving forward now, Science, so this would be a 4th and 8th grade. We perform, similar percentage points better. One concern I noticed when I was going through this and preparing today is that in our area surrounding schools, we probably need to look at the 8th grade scores because it seems like other schools in the area were scoring higher than us on this. And I was going to talk to Diana about that. Here, again, here's our performance now between 16 and 17. This did go down. Actually, no, I stand corrected. It went down just at 1 grade level in 4th grade, and it actually improved for our 8th graders. Again, that's not a cohort. Those are different students. So these students now are current 10th graders. These are current 9th graders. Social studies. Forward is tested at the high school. It's the only forward test given to high school students, and we do it right in the few weeks before they do Aspire, and it's a social studies test given to 10th grade. It's part of the battery of tests for the 4th and 8th graders. Comparisons between last year. Again, 4th grade is a concern to look at this, similar to science. 8th grade was exactly the same. In fact, the first time I saw it, I thought we had to have an error in our report. It was an anomaly where actually those different students, when you combine them together, had the same exact percentile of students who were advanced or proficient. Some North Shore comparisons here. Diana had created a slide that we shared at the earlier meeting. I don't recall the exact reason of why she was including the Glendale River Hills. Does anyone recall? I think it was
feed into Nicolay.
They fed into Nicolay with that. We have
So they're K. It's a K.
It's a K8 district, right? Cedarburg is here. Grafton is here. Mequon, Thiensville, and Port. So there's a comparison when you take all of the 3rd through 8th grade scores, combine them together. I'm going to switch to the next slide, though. This, again, defines our area of concern, where math, and you can, if I switch back to ELA, you can see that we're neck and neck. And actually, if you go in WISE Data Public, you can actually compare other districts that are high performing in ELA, and our students are performing at similar level. Math, we have this drop off that needs to be addressed. So some of the things that Dinah and I have been looking at, and you as the public actually has access to this data. All these slides were made via WISE Dash, and I know some of you have been tooling around in here and making graphs and looking at this. This is public data, and it's actually very public in that people can go in and they can pick multiple districts or multiple schools and combine up to 5 in one. So this is something that people do, and it gives us information. Now, what you only can see, though, is the aggregate score of how they did in math. One of the things Diane and I have been working with is we've been taking now we've been taking the different strands that are behind this. So, for instance, for math, it would be geometry, it would be algebraic, it would be number sense, those types of things. And we're actually pulling all those scores of how students did. We're also pulling those for math, for MAP data. And so this Friday, we, with Jeff's help, we kind of created a crosswalk for having the district average and the district median of all these different content areas for each teacher. So they will be able to see how they are performing compared to the district. And this, what we're looking for is alignment with MAP and forward for patterns. Is it instructional practices? Is it something that Origo Slate doesn't cover in terms of the scope and sequence at fourth grade? Is it something with a group of students that are matriculating up and has nothing to do with the teacher? Is it something with the building? We're going to be taking this apart and looking at each of these things to address this the math issue. I know Friday's in service, 3 of the 4 topics in the morning directly relate to learning targets with math and addressing math issues. Is there anything else that the elementary principals want to add for Friday's workshop regarding the direction with math? I'll throw that out there to you.
So Rick, the non-public data allows you to see that at the strand level across districts?
No, only our
Only out.
district.
Okay.
Yes, yes. What it does, it kind of allows us to kind of diagnose what are some of the issues, and what you see is a little bit of variance of one grade level really did a little bit better on geometry than they did with number sense. And then what we want to do is go back and figure out, well, why is that? Is it because the curriculum covers that a lot? Is it because the teacher is covering that a lot? And then we can go back into forward and then address, okay, this was an area that we need to address, maybe a few more weeks on with that content area or not. So those are the things I know that are on her attention for this. Next slides, I believe, are ACT. Are there any questions about forward?
I love that you guys are looking into, peeling back the onion further. Is that also going to go to where teachers end up next year with 2 schools? I mean, if they have an option to go, but because we can almost look at, potentially say this teacher's really strong here, and maybe we have 2 teachers that are really strong and they both want to end up at the same school. Or is that being considered when?
I will defer to Jeff on that.
I know it's
No,
not there yet.
But that's all, similar to the discussion we had at the curriculum committee, is that that's where the specialization piece comes in as well. And so, like, you can see, when you peel back the onion, you can see there's certain teachers that consistently, geometry, their kids just rock that. And then there's another area, maybe algebraic expression, where they don't do as well as other teachers in the district. But right now, with specialization, there's really no one for them to collaborate with on, boy, my kids have been rocking it here, but your kids are rocking it here. What are you doing? And this is what I'm doing in this area. And like have that, like, these are things I'm doing that's working pretty well. What do you do? It seems to not be working as well for me. What do you do differently than what I do? Because you're using the same curriculum that would go with it. So, the specialization piece will have an impact on where do teachers even want to go, and then will that be data if we have people looking to say, what does that look like? Well, that'll be one of the pieces that when we discuss it with principals, trying to figure out, what's the strongest team. Principals will have an understanding as well of the personalities and what that mesh would look like at that grade level as well. But that's definitely a data point that we can look at.
I assume there's some, I don't know how you would do it, but that you have to kind of account for socioeconomics in this to say, hey, this school always performs better. I know it came up at the curriculum committee meeting. One school always performs better in this, and but how much of that is? Can you slice it out and say, is that so much the teacher versus?
Well, but if it's the same teacher and one strand, the area, it's basically potentially looking at that grade level in that building. So the socioeconomic numbers are normed and it has no influence. It's just how geometry is being covered versus algebraic equation, or number sense or fractions for that matter.
The impact of socioeconomic status is well down the list of things that impact student achievement. So there are, many districts that they call them 100, 100, 100. They have 100% free and reduced lunch, 100% minority, and 100% something else.
Well,
my mind's going blank.
ELL or,
100% kids are proficient. So they have all these pieces. So you have all these things that should be hindrances, and they're still getting 100% of kids to be proficient. So is that an answer to be like, oh, that's because of this? Well, sure. Or I have too many of this type of kid, or I have this. Like those are all things behind the data. But like, okay, what are we doing to help all kids? And we never want to get our teachers though locked into, well, this was your number, and that's how we view them as. Just as we don't want kids to feel like they're based on a number. It's just one piece of the overall picture of a teacher that would go with it.
And the free and reduced numbers vary quite closely in between 15 and maybe in the mid-20s. So it's not like one school is 60% and the other school is 8%. They're very close.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Just any time? Yep.
All right, so I'm happy to share our ACT information with you. We shared all of this information with you at the curriculum committee meeting of the board as well. We're going to run back through that again tonight. So the data that we're looking at tonight are the results from 2017 junior only assessment day. So just that one day, that one point in time in terms of our juniors taking that in 2017. And it's different from the graduate report that we looked at a last full board meeting, which was really looking at the class of 2017, their graduation ACT data, right? So this is the class of 2018 that we're looking at. So one of the things that we had talked about is what's new on the ACT. Is only really one area to discuss that's anything new, and really it's kind of like an old news. So ACT moved back to 12-point scoring system for the writing test. So they experimented with doing it out of 36 like they do with all of the other content area scores. That didn't work so well. Writing scores were coming back lower. Kids were upset. They were concerned. Why is my writing score so such a struggle? So they decided, you know what, we're going back to the tried and true 12-point scale, 2 raters. They rate 1 to 6. They average the scores and come up with the overall writing score within the domains listed above. So that's the only change, and you'll see it reported out of 12 again tonight. So the first major data point that I have for you to look at is our results as you take a look at those from the state, and you'll see lots of good information. So if you take a look at our juniors versus the state, you'll see that we exceed the state average in all of our different content areas pretty significantly when you look at reading and English. And if you stay kind of with what Rick had talked about a little bit earlier, we're closest to the state average in our area of math, being 1.8 points beyond the state average. When you looked at English and reading, it's 2.7 and 2.5, certainly points of pride in those areas. Next, we have a 3-year comparison for you. So if you take a look at our 2015 juniors, 2016, and 2017, really gives you a 3-year look of how we're progressing. And you notice, as we discussed prior, all of the areas we're seeing an increase other than being stagnant in math. So we're really 21.9 to 21.8 over the course of those 3 years. But English, 21 to 22, reading, 21.4 to 22.6, that's a great growth. Science, 22 to 22.6. And if you look at composite, we have a very nice steady increase over the course of 3 years from our composite to 21.7 to 22.1, and then to 22.4 with the class of the juniors of 2017, not the class of 2017. So some of the highlights to share with you is that Grafton High School's composite average, so that last score was in the top 6% of all Wisconsin high schools. And if you break that down a little bit, really out of all the schools that took the ACT, of just traditional regular high schools, we were 21st out of 377 traditional high schools that was done within the state of Wisconsin. So that's a pretty excellent number. We're very proud of that number. And we're 3rd in Ozaukee County overall, behind Cedarburg and Mequon-Thiensville. We're higher than the state average in all the different content areas, certainly a point of pride, and you'll see increases from 2015 to 2017 in English, reading, science, and our composite score overall. So next, let's shift to some comparables, and these are always fun to look at. And so one of the things I discussed at the curriculum committee meeting, we have a new North Shore Conference, okay? So we now have a 10-team conference. We're looking at some different comparables up here than we have in the past. As always, we will include Homestead, Cedarburg, and Port Washington. You'll always see those. But we've also added to our comparables West Bend, East and West, very close in proximity, and then also Slinger, as well as ones for us to look at. So the first slide, you'll see our ELA comparison, so our English reading and our writing scores. And you can take a look. We're Grafton. We're on the left-hand side in the orange. And you can see as you work your way across as well. When you look at English, you see us that we're very comparable, right kind of in the middle of those schools, if you will. Reading, we are a little bit above average, and that would make sense with our overall score in reading. And writing, pretty much kind of straight across with the exception of Cedarburg. When you go to our STEM scores, or math and science, you'll notice that math is pretty flat across the first 5 schools in that comparison. And then you'll see science that we have a nice little uptick in there as well. So that's where we're at comparable-wise with those schools. And then really the number that most often gets talked about is the composite number. And once again, you'll see us very much in the middle here as well, very close with Slinger. We talked about the curriculum committee being very comparable with Slinger in a lot of our different data overall at this point. Exceeding West Bend East, West Bend West, and Port Washington, trailing Homestead and Cedarburg. So kind of putting us right in the middle of those comparables within our North Shore Conference. So that gives you a good list of comparables in terms of where we stand as Grafton. And then just want to take you through a couple of items. What steps are we taking to try to give our students the best opportunity for success in our high school, not just on the ACT, but really success overall. So one of the things that we're looking at is our students not meeting benchmarks. So we talked a lot more about benchmark during the curriculum committee meeting, and that's our students meeting defined benchmarks by ACT, which make them college ready. So we're looking at our students not meeting benchmark, and for those students, we're really investigating the coursework that they're taking, and kind of determining, are they taking the courses that they need to be taking to obtain that level? What are the areas that we can look at from them in the areas of math, for example, which seems to be a common theme throughout our district that we're talking about tonight. How can we get them to college and career readiness within that by looking at that coursework? And then, as we showed you also at that meeting, is really starting to look more closely at Aspire data. You can take a look from freshman to sophomore to junior and actually start to take a look at that cohort data to see how our students are growing. Are they growing on the projected path when they take the Aspire as a freshman and sophomore? Are they exceeding that path? Are they falling below that path? We want to really start looking at that more as a cohort from freshman, sophomore to junior year. So that's something that we're also starting to do now that we have a couple of years of data with this same assessment system, which is great. It's nice to have a same assessment system over time. And then we've talked to you at length about this really over the last year and a half. We've really beefed up our test preparation for our students. So we just listed a couple of things that we're continuing to do. Students will take a full-length practice test, and that's coming up here very early in November. We will have Black Hawk time sessions to help them understand the results and set goals for the testing. We have time set up BHT with teachers. We have an on-site test prep course that we're offering here through Wisconsin Test Prep. We obviously have embedded test questions in all of our courses, preparing students to take the ACT. We will practice the writing piece in our Comm Arts classes. Conferencing continues, and even during the fall parent-teacher conferences, we had a 8-parent ACT meeting for our junior parents. So we feel like we've really beefed up this area over the course of the last couple of years, and we will continue to do that for our students. And we'll end with a couple success stories for you. On that testing day last year, 18 out of 170 students who participated on that day scored a 30 or higher on the ACT, and that speaks to some of the preparation pieces I believe we have in place. And you can see the data from the previous years: 8 out of 199, 10 out of 193. We went all the way up to 18 last year. It speaks to the hard work of our students, to be quite honest with you, and then the opportunities that I think we're putting in place for them as well. And then as of the presentation a couple of weeks ago, we already had 55 students from the class of 2018 who have retaken the ACT. 30 of them had already increased their composite score since that testing date a year ago. So that's the piece that we're really starting to emphasize next, and that we'll notice over the course of the next couple of years. We should see, hopefully more of our students retaking in June. They've added a July test date now, and then the test dates in September and October. We want to try to see those numbers increase of our students that are retaking, and we also then want to see that those scores increase as well from them. So we think we have a good process in place, and we're seeing some good results as as a part of that process, but certainly we have work to do, and you can see that within the area of us trying to look at that coursework, studying more of Aspire in terms of the path that students are on. You know, and those are a couple of things that, that we're going to be working on as a, not only a building, but as a district. So, and that's all I have for you tonight. Other than questions.
Questions for Scott? Okay, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
We have an overnight trip request.
Yes, we have one overnight trip request from the high school for the Grafton wrestling team. That will be coming up almost at the end of the year, 12/29 to 12/30, and it is the 65-team tournament. It's called Oshkosh on the Water, so a huge team tournament that's coming up at the end of the year. Prepares them for seeing some high-quality competition for students that are looking to go on to state and so forth. So we would ask the board to approve that.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any questions? Do we have a female wrestler? It says we need a female chaperone. Do we have a female wrestler?
I don't know that we do.
He mentions
they haven't. Well, they haven't had they haven't had tryouts yet, so he wouldn't know that.
Okay.
For a number of weeks. Yeah, but this is more like what if. Yeah. Females can wrestle. What's that? Oh, and they could have a manager. Sure.
Just make sure that Kevin's aware.
Yeah, and he put that in the request, so he knows what he's. I think he's covering his bases. They haven't had tryouts yet.
Okay.
He's trying to get approval. It's a great tournament. You know, top teams in the state are going to be there to see some really, really, really good wrestlers there. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and it passes. And then a gift report.
And then we have a restricted gift for a teacher's classroom that is from the Northwestern Mutual Foundation, and Robin Cornelius is the contact person. It's a check for $500 in the classroom. So we'd ask the board to approve that donation.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Questions there? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and it passes as well.
We will send a thank you letter
Yeah.
on behalf of our district as well for that.
So finally, the construction update.
Yeah, so we have some pictures to show you. Before the meeting tonight, we went on a tour of the high school and some of the construction that has taken place in the last couple of weeks. But with the great weather that we've had these last couple of weeks, there's been a ton of different things happening at each of our buildings. At the high school, you can see footings that have been poured. We went and saw a lot of this stuff. One of the things that we saw today was in the gym where they filled in, used to be doors, and now it's going to be part of the receiving area, and so now they put bricks in that. They did it this morning, and so that's been completed. They have the firewall for the gym is completed, and you'll see the wall that's attached to our current building, so that's going up for the gymnasium to be going up, and then as well.
That's all I have.
And so the other piece is at the front that we looked at near the pool area where that's being torn out. They've started putting the footings in there, so we're going to start seeing that go up as well. So no matter where you go at the high school, you see a lot of brick that's sitting around and so forth. Moving on to Woodview, they've done a ton of work with moving dirt and then getting the outline of the gym in place. And moving forward, you'll see it's already above the current building, and so that's starting to come out. And if you'll notice when you drive by there, there's the brick, and then there's the current building, and there's like that gap. And I hadn't looked at the plan, so I was asking Hoffman. We were over there like, what is that? And that's part of the storage area and the kitchen area that's being added into that space. So it really is, that truly is the gym wall, and that gap between the current building and the new wall is being covered over, and that's what's getting added there. So they had the firewall and east wall. The gym addition is completed. They say it's about a week per wall. So it's about a week per wall to get that up. And moving forward, next week they're going to start the firewall on the classroom addition side. So on the other side of the building, they've already, I think, poured the footings there. They poured the footings, and now they'll start going up with that as well. So they have about 11, 12 masons, a number of masons that are hammering away on these sites to really get that going as quickly as possible. Kennedy, where they had to excavate the most dirt, and movement and so forth. And you can see, you know, the concrete pouring up to pour the footings and so forth. They've been trying to really go hard at the high school and at Woodview so that when those footings are poured and they're ready to go, then they can switch some masons over there and get that going up as well. But Kennedy has, they poured the wall footing for the firewall, and they're starting that foundation wall along the east side of the building. The masonry wall should be by November 1st, and then you can see they've excavated off and actually cut off the landing of what used to be that side of the building there. Water is the biggest problem over there. When it rains, they're pumping water out. They now have a couple spots that they've actually sunk some pumps in, so it's more quickly helping us with rain. But that is where the biggest issue, because they had to go down so far, because that building, that footprint is becoming so much bigger. They had to move so much dirt to be able to get to that second story. They're the only ones that are going to 2 stories, so they've gone lower, and so there's more space there for the ground and saturation and so forth. But they're working creatively with that, and they'll start with the rebar delivered last week. They'll be starting this week with that, and we continue to hope for good weather that goes with that. Jamie, anything I forgot?
Nope.
So that gives you an update of all of our buildings. We met with Hoffman on Friday for our site meetings, so we have some updates that will be going out this week to all of our families that will include some of these pictures as well as some different bullet points of what's happening at each site. We are working on getting a camera at each of our sites that would be a time-lapse camera, so people will be able to watch it in a time lapse, not, you know, like second by second by second, watching grass grow. But a time lapse of being able to see each of our sites, so that would hopefully be exciting for our parents and our community as well. And we have one up now. We're working on the other 2, and hope to have those up soon.
Okay, thanks. So I'll look for a motion to convene in closed session and consider performance-related data of the superintendent over which the board has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is in accordance with Wisconsin State Statute 19851C. Have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Jerry, you need to say yes.
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 And yes.